That today with a member of Congress. Also, the National Taxpayers Union recently sent an open letter to the Senate urging them to make changes to the tax policy within the big, beautiful bill. I'll bring on the president of the National Taxpayers Union to explain what they want changed. And then later, a Washington judge recently ruled against President Trump's two-gender executive order and demanded that prisons must still accommodate transgender inmates with gender-affirming care. That means men living with women. I'll give you, what could possibly go wrong? I'll give you the details and more coming up. But first, let's start with the Biden auto pen scandal. All right, so the Department of Justice is now currently investigating pardons granted by the Biden administration, specifically whether the previous president was competent and whether or not others were taking advantage of him through the use of the auto pen by basically running the country on elected officials. This comes after Kentucky Representative James Comer launched a House Oversight Committee probe into the possible cover-up of Biden's mental decline just last month, requesting appearances and information from Joe Biden's leading physician, Kevin O'Connor, among many others. He'll be joining me here in a moment, but first we have Brian Glenn joining me here in Washington to discuss this a little bit more in detail. Brian, I know you've been speculating because something else came up today that you and I were talking about just a short time ago, and that is the revelation that Karine Jean-Pierre, the woman that stood out there for 2 years, 8 months, and a few days defending Joe Biden's ability to do the job. Oh, he's sharp as a tack. He could do one-handed push-ups. He could do backflips at lunch and remember everything. Now she is no longer a Democrat, Brian, and it makes us wonder, why is she getting so far from the Democrat Party? What do you think?
I don't know. Good afternoon, Steve. Maybe she feels some heat coming from the oversight chairman, Congressman Jamie Comer, as far as who knew what, who knew when, and what were they doing. And more importantly, you can compare some of the dates on these executive orders and these pardonings. Was Joe Biden in the White House when this was going on? What did he know? Did he even know he was signing some of these executive orders and some of these pardons? But my goodness, Steve, as this story develops, this is going to be fun to watch. Grab the popcorn, because I think you'll have a few people that are willing to talk. But it's very interesting that KJP, I never seem to get that straight.
That's okay.
What does she know? And what does she want to say?
What does she know? Did she see the president? Not see the president? We use the word unprecedented in this town a lot. This truly is. I have never seen a press secretary come out a few weeks later and say, yeah, I'm not really part of that party anymore. I've never seen that before. Brian, I appreciate you taking a moment here. We got to shift gears because Julia Letlow is here, Republican member of Congress from Louisiana 5. Congresswoman, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Greatly appreciate it. Look, let's start with what we were just talking about. Karine Jean-Pierre, I've heard some headlines that made my head whip around, but this one just about gave me whiplash today. I said, excuse me? Karine Jean-Pierre, 2 years, 8 months, and a few days, stood out there telling us how competent Joe Biden was. Said anybody that questioned his competence didn't know what they were dealing with. She's around him all the time, his stamina, his ability, his sharpness. And now she's no longer a Democrat? What do you make of this?
Wow, what a turnabout. Yes, that is an incredible narrative that she has played. I think we were all fed a lie. I think the media perpetuated that, including her, and she should be held responsible for the lie that they spread to the American people. But yeah, the headlines now to read that today, quite remarkable.
Well, you might have heard Brian Glenn and I talking off the top of the program. It made us speculate, look, this whole auto pen scandal that James Comer will be on here in a few minutes to discuss with me as well, the whole auto pen scandal makes you wonder if she just wants to be away from it. She doesn't want to answer questions about Joe Biden's cognitive ability, his ability to do the job. Was he actually mentally present when all of these things were happening? If I were in her position, I'd want to be as far away from that as possible as well. Could that be what's happening here? Or is she just jumping ship because the Democrats are trying to sell things that the American people are not buying?
I think both theories could be true, but I do know this. The American people, especially in Louisiana, want answers. If there was an auto pen being used, they absolutely deserve those answers. And so it's our job to make sure that we get to the bottom of it, whatever happened.
It certainly is. All right, so I want to ask you about the auto pen, then I want to get to you about something in California with trans athletes where they continue to defy everything. But this auto pen scandal, if true, your colleagues are demanding answers, as well they should. If an auto pen is used, at a minimum, whoever's ordering that auto pen to be used has to be present mentally to understand the ramifications of what they're doing. And by all indications, Joe Biden did not only not know what was happening, he didn't authorize it in any way. This would be the biggest scandal in American history, I believe. How concerned are you?
Absolutely concerned. And if that's the truth, those people should be held responsible to the full extent of the law. So there's a lot of investigation that needs to occur. It's Congress's job to do it. I'm absolutely confident that my colleagues and I will get to the bottom of it.
I certainly hope you're right. Now, let's shift gears because I know this is a topic you've been focused on, as we all have. When young men are allowed to compete against their female counterparts in middle school, high school, or college, let's be clear about this. It is not fair. And we've just learned, no surprise, because we knew perfectly well that the boxer that competed in the Olympics, the young man from Algeria that beat up the woman from Italy viciously, and she dropped out 40 seconds later, was just a representation of how wrong this truly is. Look, we can't have men in women's sports, and yet places like Maine and California are defying President Trump's executive orders on this. It's common sense. It's an 80-20 issue. Even your Democrat colleagues don't believe this is the right thing to do, but they refuse to stand up and tell the truth. Why?
It's astounding to me that in California, they are defying the executive order. You know, as a mom of two small children, as a mom of a daughter, I can only imagine how upset these parents are and how upset these female athletes are. So I have to tell you, I was the long jump state champion in Louisiana in 1998. I would have been devastated if I lost that gold medal to a biological man. It is absolutely unfair. We have done so much to defend women, to protect women in sports. I cannot believe that the governor in California is willfully defying the executive order. He should be held accountable. I know that President Trump is going to make some pretty strong demands to make sure that that doesn't happen again in California. But wow, what an incredible travesty that is for our young girls. And what example is that setting? And I'm so proud of the female athletes who stood up and said, no, this is absolutely wrong. We're not going to stand for this. We're going to fight against it. We need to continue that fight. Unfortunately, it is still happening in our country.
You know, I'm really proud of the girls that refused to get on the podium next to a boy. I was really proud of them. But you were a champion. But the girls and the women that I really even have more empathy for are the ones that would have finished in third place or fifth place. They've gotten to that last spot on the podium. They've worked really hard. They never probably thought they were going to win, but they made it to the podium. They got the bronze medal, and instead of getting the bronze medal, they get pushed off. And they get nothing at all for all their hard work and getting up early in the morning and working hard and sweating and making sure they were as good as they could possibly be. Those are the girls that I think are being really cheated by this malpractice of allowing men to compete in women's sports.
Well said. And it absolutely has to come to an end. I never would have imagined in a million years I'd be sitting here talking about biological men competing in women's sports. We are going to stand up against it in Congress. The president is standing up against it. And I'm hopeful for the future that we will stop this terrible practice from happening in the future.
Look, I know you talk to your Democrat colleagues in the halls of Congress. I know you're over there in the Rayburn building and elsewhere talking to them. You tell me the truth. They don't really think this is a good idea, do they? Because the Democrats I talk to quietly say, they're not on board with it. But why will they not stand up and do the right thing? Because I know you talk to them. They say the same things to you, don't they?
Absolutely. Many of my colleagues feel the same way, but not only my Democratic colleagues. Everywhere you go, every parent that I talk to in Louisiana, in this country, knows that that is just absolutely wrong. We do not want men competing against our girls. It just should not be. So, again, you said it at the top. It's an 80-20 issue. It's something that everybody in their heart of hearts knows is wrong.
Yeah, I want to ask you one more thing before I let you go here, Congresswoman. I really appreciate your time today. Elon Musk, the guy who was behind Doge, obviously frustrated with the process, frustrated with government, and I can understand that. As you watch the sausage get made, it's not always pretty, but he says the big beautiful bill is an abomination. He says unless money is cut, America is on the road to bankruptcy. And so for the Republicans that voted it through, what do you say to Elon Musk or the American people that are deeply concerned that the $36 trillion debt will become 40, will become 50, will become beyond reach?
Well, I am so appreciative to Elon Musk and his work through Doge to identify those areas that we can cut back. You know, as a member of the Appropriations Committee, it is so wonderful to see sunshine, light. I've often said is the best medicine, transparency. Let's see what these funds were actually being used for by the prior administration. So I'm so grateful to him and the job that he did. And that rescissions package that just came over from the president's desk today, we are going to implement. But I also have to give a great credit to the speaker from Louisiana and the majority leader from Louisiana for doing an incredible job of pushing through President Trump's one big beautiful bill, his tax cuts for the middle class people, the child tax credits that are going to affect so many parents just like me out there. So I am incredibly grateful for the work that Doge did, but I'm also incredibly proud of the work that all of us in Congress came together and through our committees wrote this bill. It's a product that I think that we can all get behind, that we can be proud of, that I know the president is pushing forward. I trust the president wholeheartedly that he knows that this is going to be a boost for the economy. And we are going to look back on this day and be very grateful for the work that the president did and that Congress did to push it through. Now it's up to the Senate to go ahead and do their job.
We'll see what happens. I know a lot of people are still frustrated with the level of spending. We'll see what the Senate does before it comes back to the House, and then we'll reconvene the conversation. Julia Leto, Congresswoman for Louisiana 5, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll take a break and be right back. It is America's Voice Live. Well, the House Oversight Committee asking some very important questions when it comes to who exactly was in charge of that auto pen for all of that time that Joe Biden was, well, not up to the task, shall we say. Joining me now, James Comer, a congressman from the great state of Kentucky. Congressman, nice to see you here today.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with this, though, because I want to get to the auto pen, but I wonder if this headline from today, it's not often in this town that I have a bit of a whiplash reaction. But when I saw the headline, Karine Jean-Pierre switches party affiliation and is no longer a Democrat, well, that got my attention. Nobody was closer to Joe Biden. Nobody stood out there and said it more, that Joe Biden was in great shape, mentally sharp, tough, full of vigor for 2 years, 8 months and change. She was there telling us all how wonderful Joe Biden was. I've never seen this happen. Unprecedented is a word that's overused, but in this case, it might be right, sir. What do you make of this?
I'm not surprised. Look, we just had a lifelong Democrat in Kentucky, the longest-serving Democrat state senator in the Kentucky General Assembly switch parties this week. People see the writing on the wall. The Democrats have, they represent the illegals and, deranged, depressed men and women that think government's the solution to all of our problems. And, they've just walked away from the working men and women of America who work hard and pay taxes and believe in the Constitution. So I think you'll see a lot more people that will start drifting away from the Democrat Party in the future.
Yeah, she said, until January 20, I was responsible for speaking on behalf of the President of the United States. At noon on that day, I became a private citizen. But she was a private citizen, was an employee of Joe Biden, now a private citizen, that I believe you would want to speak to. If you wanted to know the condition of Joe Biden and the auto pen being used 1,500 times just for commutations and pardons and a whole lot of other things. She's somebody you're going to call, isn't she?
Yeah, she has a good chance of being called. Look, Jean-Pierre, Ian Sams, if you remember him, and Dr. O'Connor, those are three people that consistently stood in front of the American public, either publicly or through statement, and said that Joe Biden was great. He's at the top of his game. He's physically fit. He gets up and exercises. His mind is sharper than it's ever been. And everyone in the world knows that's not true. Most of us knew at the time that wasn't true. But now the people on CNN and, a lot of the liberal media, they've just had a great awakening, or they've just given up, or I don't know what they've done. But everyone knows those statements weren't true. So anyone who consistently defended Joe Biden's health and mental fitness, they're going to be brought in to explain to us what they based those statements on.
Yeah. Now, here's the challenge. If I'm looking at this correctly, the Constitution never considered such a thing because there wasn't such a thing. An auto pen didn't exist. The president had to sign pardons. The president had to sign legislation. So here we are in a place that we hadn't been there. How do you adjudicate this from a constitutional point of view, from a legal point of view, if there were things that were signed that you can arrive at the conclusion that Joe Biden had no idea they were being signed? Where do we go from there? It's uncharted territory.
That's the key. There are some presidents where you can use an auto pen. No one ever would have envisioned using it every day on everything. It was used by Obama when he was out of the country once. And I think, the courts upheld that. But at the end of the day, the question is, did Joe Biden know that the auto pen was being used? Did Joe Biden know what he was signing? Did Joe Biden even give the authority to the low-level staffers who took the documents and stuck them in the auto pen? That's where we're starting. We're starting at the bottom with the employees who we've identified as being the lower level grunt employees who manually took the documents and stuck them in the auto pen and pressed power to sign Joe Biden's signature. We're going to see who authorized them to do that. What was the process? Because we're talking about executive orders that impacted, everything from energy policy to Trump-proofing the government, where federal employees could continue to work from home and not have to show up for work or show any productivity, to the price of gasoline. So these are important decisions that were made by someone, and we want to find out who, because most people don't believe Joe Biden's that someone.
Well, then you come back to big pieces of legislation. the Inflation Reduction Act. Did he actually sign it? Did he know what was in it? I mean, President Trump has pointed out recently on another topic, a big issue, that's the border. He said Joe Biden was never an open borders guy. Never. Why would he sign all of these things that allowed for an open border? It's a fair question, isn't it?
It's a very fair question. You know, at the end of the day, I think our investigation is going to focus on the excessive use of the auto pen and what the process was. There's no evidence anywhere that we have found or that has emerged publicly that would suggest Joe Biden ever gave the authority to use it. What most people believe, that's what people like Jake Tapper, who argued with me when I said Joe Biden was a mental invalid. Now they're cashing in, saying, "Oh, there was a cover up," and you know, the White House hid Joe Biden's obvious mental decline. So who was the person making the decision? The evidence would suggest it was not Joe Biden. So we're going to try to figure out who that person was, because at stake is you have all these executive orders that we believe could easily be deemed null and void in the courts because they were essentially forged by low-level staffers.
Well,
you know,
here's
this is
the
a
thing.
big deal.
Jake Tapper is not the only guy selling a book. Jean-Pierre also selling a book. It comes out in October. Go figure. One more thing I want to ask you before we run here today, and that is Elon Musk obviously getting a lot of attention for calling the big, beautiful bill a disgusting abomination, having left the Doge department now. What are your thoughts about the former head of Doge's comments? I think there's some frustration in this country when it comes to the House not working to codify the Doge cuts. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, it's disappointing that Musk would say that. This is President Trump's legislative agenda. I mean, these are the tax cuts he talked about on the campaign trail. This is the increased border security. This is, you know, a lot of substantive policy in this one bill. And President Trump's worked very hard to get this legislation across the finish line. So what Musk said wasn't helpful, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's gonna matter. The White House just sent the first bit of the Doge cuts to us within the last 24 hours. So we're going to pass the Doge cuts. We just never had gotten anything from Musk. So I think there's a lot of frustration with Musk. He's certainly a brilliant mind. He's worked in the private sector. He's always been the boss. He could go in and fire people at will. Unfortunately, you can't do that in the government. It would be easier for everyone if you could, but you can't. And I know that he faced a lot of the obstacles and barriers that many of us have faced throughout the past 8 years trying to get government more efficient. So I appreciate Elon Musk. I just disagree with him on this bill.
Fair enough, Congressman. James Comer, greatly appreciate you being here today. And look, all of these things are coming together now. Maybe we'll see a bill come back and be finished before the 4th of July, as the president would like to see. And we'll keep an eye on it, sir. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
There you have it. All right, don't go anywhere. America's Voice Live will continue after a short break. back to America's Voice Live. Glad to have you here as we bring you another special edition from the nation's capital. We like being here and giving you an up-close look at everything that's going on here from Washington, D.C. All right, so joining me now is Pete Sepp, the National Taxpayers Union, sending a letter to the Senate urging them to make changes to the tax policy within the big, beautiful bill. Pete, nice to see you today.
Oh, always great to be here.
So tell me about the letter. The prospect of the big, beautiful bill actually being passed. Republican leaders and outlets alike are looking at the bill to see what could be tweaked. And as we talked about with two members of Congress already in this program, there's a lot of frustration out there. It's not just Elon Musk. There are a lot of voters out there who are frustrated with Republicans not getting something codified when it comes to cutting real spending. What's the letter? Where do we start?
That's for sure. Now, on the tax side, I think we need to maximize the economic growth potential of the one big, beautiful bill. There are several things we could do to make sure that happens. One of them, first and foremost, making sure the business cost recovery provisions are made permanent. Sounds complicated, but a big one is simply full and immediate expensing. You invest $100,000 in new plant and equipment, but you can only write off $12,500 of that. The rest of it is phantom taxable income to the business. That doesn't make sense. This bill corrects the problem, but only for a limited period of time, a few years. We need to make that provision permanent. That alone could help to double the economic growth forecast that this bill has right now. When we have that kind of economic growth, a lot of other things like fighting the deficit become a little easier. A little. You get more revenue to the government, you get more stable growth. But that doesn't mean we can take the eye off federal spending. And you're right to raise this concern, Steve. We need to be doing
the number that I've seen
here.
The numbers that I have seen, $3.7 trillion in tax cuts. That stimulates the economy. But above $2 trillion in additional deficit, which adds to the final debt number, which is almost $37 trillion. We can't do that anymore. Because if we continue down that road, we're going to end up in a place just like Greece did a few years ago. A debt crisis is inevitable if we continue to go that way. But unlike Greece, nobody can bail us out. That's the problem.
Right. That's right. The projection right now under this bill is $1.8 trillion in interest costs alone to service the national debt, what we currently have and what we'll add to it. When you take a look at the last debt auction, in other words, the place where we go looking for buyers of our indebtedness, the results were not pretty. The interest rates that we're going to have to keep charging to lure people to take on more of this debt, many of them from abroad, is going to get prohibitive. And as you said, nobody's going to be around to bail out the United States when it collapses. We cannot afford a Greek-style debt crisis. And the problem is, we don't exactly know where and when that happens. We don't know what level of GDP our debt has to be before it all collapses. We've got some goodwill here. We've got some time, but not a lot. We cannot get this wrong.
Yes, we cannot get this wrong. That's exactly right. So I guess we'll have to wait and see what Ron Johnson does and Rand Paul does and Rick Scott does and maybe even Mike Lee of Utah. We'll see, because we'll have to keep an eye on all of that. Pete, I got to leave it right there, my friend. Thank you as always, but this is going to be going on for a while as they work toward that July 4th goal. We'll see if they can get it done in 30 days. I have no idea. Pete, thank you. All right, this month, Tax Network USA proudly celebrates our nation's birthday, honoring freedom, resilience, and financial independence. To mark the occasion, they're offering 10% off all services through the 4th of July. If you're dealing with back taxes or missed the April 15th deadline, don't wait. The IRS is rapidly stepping up enforcement. Penalties can add up quickly, up to 5% per month, making it out to 25% of your total tax bill just for not filing. That's on top of whatever it is you already owe. But there's good news. Tax Network USA can still help you turn things around. Whether you're self-employed, run a business, or your books are a complete mess, Their team knows how to cut through the chaos and find solutions that work. Your consultation is always free, and getting ahead of the problem right now can help you avoid harsh penalties, wage garnishments, or surprise bank levies. Take the first step. Call 800-905-8000 or visit tnusa.com/RAV. And don't forget, you'll get 10% off all services through July the 4th as part of the celebration of our nation's birthday. Regain control of your finances with expert help from Tax Network USA. Coming up after the break, I'll tell you about a Washington judge who ruled against President Trump's two-gender executive order and demanded that prisons must still accommodate transgender inmates. That's right, let the men live with women. What could possibly go wrong? Straight ahead. Look, I don't know where these ideas come from. I don't think you know where these ideas come from. But all of a sudden they're hearing like, really? This is what we're discussing. President Donald Trump, no stranger to federal judges ruling against his executive orders or legislative proposals, no matter how much common sense they're based in. This time, the president faces yet another injunction in court in regards to sex change operations for convicted felons, convicted killers, some of them, as a judge in Washington state halted the president's executive order and ruled that the Federal Bureau of Prisons must continue to provide clothing and hormone therapy to inmates seeking to transition from one gender to another. The Trump administration and its legal team seek to prevail over this ruling, citing the basics of the executive order, which states that it is meant to recognize two genders, and further added that transgender inmates should be housed with male inmates. That's where they belong. Here to talk with me about this is legal expert and host of What's Right, Sam Mirjovsky. Sam, nice to have you here. Sorry about the last name thing. I did my best. Appreciate it.
That was perfect.
Go ahead and say it for me.
Yeah.
I did.
Mirjovsky.
See?
Yeah, there we go.
Mirjovsky. There it is. It's long enough. It's straight enough. It's right down the middle. Gosh darn it, he kicked it through. All right, look, can you imagine, even 10 years ago, sitting here discussing whether or not you and I, the taxpayer, were going to pay for inmates to have, parts removed and other parts added, and they're going to have hormone therapy. I mean, really? And then we're going to have men who think they're women in with the women, because what could possibly go wrong with that? I mean, has the left, in this particular instance, lost its collective mind?
Well, Steve, I think we agree on this 100%. This is insanity. Obviously, under the Eighth Amendment, we need to treat our prisoners with dignity. There's obviously a prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment, and of course a requirement that prisoners be given, medical care that is, important for their survival. There, in my view, is absolutely no basis, A, for federal tax dollars to be spent on inmates for these procedures. And then B, of course, the separate issue, which I think is far more serious, is placing oftentimes sex offender males in with females in custody. That's insanity. And there's a duty of protection.
Sam, I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh, because this is serious stuff, but it is so absurd that I'm like, I can't even believe we're having a conversation like this. And here's the thing, Sam. The Democrats don't even believe this is the right thing to do. They don't. This is an 80-20. This might even be a 90-10 issue. I mean, this is so far beyond, what people support in this country. In fact, I would say this. Go ahead. Give it a trial run. Go to Massachusetts or Connecticut or California, any other deep blue state. Put it on the ballot. Put it on the ballot if you believe this is the right thing to do, and find out how voters feel. You'll get obliterated, right?
Well, 100%. It polls somewhere around 80, 85, obviously on the side of sanity. That means that the people that are for this are somewhere in the same region as folks who believe in Bigfoot. All right. So you're absolutely right. It absolutely is going to be one of the crazier things that future historians look back on in this era of things that we've done. That said, while the mainstream of America is at odds with this, believe it or not, for the Democratic Party, this is an issue that they push. And as recently as the 2024 election, when they were, when they had their, getting ready and putting together their party platform, Steve, they talked about this. This was like a big issue for them. So in the minds of Democrats, this is still a winning deal. And I think it's crazy.
I'm confused on the Bigfoot thing, right? Are we talking about straight Bigfoot or transgender Bigfoot?
This is right. Well, we're talking about. I guess we're just talking about the OG Bigfoot, but it doesn't. At this point, it could be anything. And the same amount of people out there that think that Bigfoot is real, think that we ought to be putting men in with women in prison, and at the same time simultaneously shelling out tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars for their sex change operations. Bananas.
Right. Have parts added and parts removed. And by the way, once you have parts added and parts removed, you become a medical patient for the rest of your life. It's not like you just have the surgery and you go on your merry way. It doesn't work that way. Newsflash. And if you ever want to feel really ill, go look at the pictures of what this transitioning thing looks like. I'm serious, Sam. If people want to be honest and they say, I support this, go look at the pictures. Go look at the pictures and tell me you still support this. I'll give you the last word.
Well, I have looked at the pictures, and I go back to, if you think, for example, that trans folks ought to be in the military in active duty combat, look at those pictures and you'll realize that it is impossible. You have seeping wounds. It's terrible stuff. Yeah. Ongoing medical care. You're absolutely right. So crazy, crazy stuff.
Yeah, it's beyond the pale. Sam, I greatly appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Steve, my pleasure.
All right. Don't go anywhere. America's Voice Live will continue in a moment. but I sure do enjoy being in D.C. You know why? There's a lot of action around here, and you're always in the thick of it, and that's why I enjoy being here. All right, so House Minority Leader and Democrat Hakeem Jeffries vowed yesterday to unmask. To dox is the word they use, every single ICE agent and tell the world who they are. Listen to this.
Every single ICE agent who's engaged in this aggressive overreach and are trying to hide their identities from the American people will be unsuccessful in doing that. This is America. This is not the Soviet Union. We're not behind the Iron Curtain. This is not the 1930s. And every single one of them, no matter what it takes, no matter how long it takes, will of course be identified. That, in fact, is the law. And we're going to make sure that the American people have the transparency necessary to hold people accountable when there are folks who cross the line.
Cross the line by enforcing the law, threatening them and their families. Jeffries' threats came a day after acting ICE Director Todd Lyons explained in detail and quite clearly at a press conference on Operation Patriot why ICE is wearing masks. It's because of people like Jeffries and the people that he riles up. Listen to this.
People are out there taking photos of the names, their faces, and posting them online with death threats to their family and themselves. So I'm sorry if people are offended by them wearing masks, but I'm not going to let my officers and agents go out there and put their lives on the line and their family on the line because people don't like what immigration enforcement is. They are wearing those masks because we ran an operation with the Secret Service where we arrested someone that was going online, taking their photos, posting their families, their kids' Instagram, their kids' Facebooks, and targeting them. So let me ask, is that the issue here, that we're just upset about the masks? Or is anyone upset with the fact that ICE officers' families were labeled terrorists?
It's remarkable, isn't it? The Democrat Party would have you believe it's okay to unmask federal law enforcement agents so they can be identified, their houses targeted, their kids targeted, their wives and families targeted, and their husbands and their extended family. The party of mandatory masks, the party that told you were a child killer if you didn't wear a mask, now demanding that agents be unmasked so their kids can be free game. You figure it out, because I certainly cannot. The FBI announced yesterday the arrest of 33-year-old Yunxing Jian, a former University of Michigan researcher, on Tuesday, charged with conspiracy to smuggle Fusarium graminearum, a toxic fungus that causes head blight. It's a disease that destroys wheat, barley, corn, and rice. It can result in billions of losses yearly. I talked to a farmer this morning. He said it would result in 50% crop loss. Its toxins can also harm humans and livestock. Jian had been living in the U.S. since 2021 on a J-1 visa, remains in custody awaiting a detention hearing scheduled for tomorrow. Her co-conspirator, 34-year-old Sun Young Liu, was caught carrying the fungus at Detroit Metropolitan Airport July the 27th, denied entry, returned to China. Both face charges of conspiracy, smuggling, making false statements, visa fraud, and more. Jian allegedly orchestrated the plot using her research expertise, while Liu attempted to deliver the materials. She also reportedly signed a loyalty pledge to the CCP. Now, here's the problem we face. Right now, we have fungicides that can control this disease that they had in their possession. But if they're trying to weaponize the disease, make it resistant to fungicide, well, nobody knows what could happen then. We could have 50% crop loss or more. Are they trying to inflict famine on America? I'll let you answer that question. The Trump administration continues to roll full steam ahead for America and her citizens, moving mountains at the speed of light. However, when they're trying to right the country and right the ship, they can't also take your personal finances into account. You have to do that. That's why thousands of Americans are now buying gold from Birch Gold. Here are the facts. Over the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 30%. Central banks are buying gold in record quantities, so demand doesn't seem to be subsiding, not at all. The real reset's on the horizon. The BRICS nations are looking to unseat the U.S. dollar as the global reserve currency, but you can find peace of mind in gold. Birch Gold makes it extremely easy to convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or you could even buy some to store in your home safe. Just text America to 989898, and Birch Gold will send you a free information kit on gold. No obligation, only useful information. With an A+ rating at the Better Business Bureau, tens of thousands of happy customers. Take control of protecting your savings today. Text America to the number 989898. Do that right now, and you'll be quite happy that you did. That's Birch Gold. Now, after the break, we'll have a story that reminds us of just how wonderful America is. We do it every day because we want you to have a smile on your face before it's all said and done. Then we'll have answers to our America's Voice question of the day. Do you think Elon Musk is right about the big, beautiful bill? Does Congress need to spend less? Why or why not? We'll have the answer straight ahead here on ABL. What makes America wonderful? We do this every day. Why? Look, I want you to have a smile on your face when it's all said and done. I do. And you hear all these stories and tough things that are happening and challenges people are facing. But look, we live in a great country, so we every day want to make sure you have a smile on your face, right? Every day. Just remind you how great America is. So today's story comes to us from Seward, Alaska. Lovely place, by the way, where a man's wife stuck with her husband for 3 hours with a 700-pound boulder resting on top of him. Oof. The couple, Cal Morris, Joe Rue, walking along a hiking trail known as Godwin Glacier, and what seemed like a normal outing quickly spiraled into a question of life or death when the man slipped and tumbled down a rock bed and landed in the water, where he unfortunately got caught under the boulder. He got wedged in there. The man's wife quickly went down the rock bed, tried to help her husband by putting rocks under the boulder to try to roll it off, but her attempts ineffective. Roop then called emergency services, but she had to leave to do it. Was able to give exact coordinates due to her past law enforcement experience. Here's where we are. I need help right now. When emergency crews got there, found the man's wife holding Morris's head above water. Morris was also coming in and out of consciousness and showing signs of hypothermia. The water there is cold, to say the least. But through the effort of 7 people, the emergency personnel were able to get the massive boulder off the man and get him to the hospital. Believe it or not, being caught in a situation where life and death is in question and also a horrifying prospect. But there's Jo Roop's determination to help her husband and stick by his side. It's indicative of values that make America wonderful. Well done, everybody. Oh, well done. Here's the question of the day. Do you think Elon Musk is right about the big, beautiful bill? Does Congress need to spend less? Why or why not? Brian Sharkey writes this. Elon is right. We need to spend less because our deficit is hovering by the moon. It's so high. Reva Rice. Never thought I'd say this, but yes, he's right. He's spot on because the spineless bunch in D.C. are more concerned about re-election than paying down our debt that they created. They represent their pockets, not the people. Richard Ayala. Need more massive cuts. Need more massive cuts. Tax cuts is there to induce voting on this pig of a bill. Spending must end at some point. Elon did his job. Up to Doge and Trump to force more cuts. If not, it will be the death of the GOP in 26 and 28. You know, I'm telling you, there's a lot of anger out there when it comes to spending. Barbara Grahams writes, of course we need to spend less, but we also need a plan that is acceptable and passes. What good is a slimmed down bill that dies in Congress? You don't always get what you want. Reminds me of a song. Andrew Woodham, the purpose of Doge is to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. So if this bill is any way supports any of these, then he is right. Barb Croach Partaka. I thought that was the whole point. I thought that was the whole point. And Lisa Latia, Musk is right. Congress wants the gravy train to keep moving for them. Most of them care only for themselves. It's so sad but true. We'll leave it there for today. Certainly glad that you were here today. I always enjoy my time in the nation's capital. Not as bad as you might think. It's a swamp, all right, but it's okay. Can't wait to start the broadcast day on Real America's Voice with you tomorrow morning right here, bright and early at 6 a.m. with the Steve Gerber Show. I'll have hot coffee and conversation. You bring some coffee along for yourself. And then I'll see you right back here from America's Voice Live as I'm back in Detroit tomorrow. See you then.
tried to shut them up.
There's no guarantee to free speech.
They tried to cancel them.
Deplatforming works.
They even threw them in jail.
Peter Navarro,
Steve Bannon,
now in prison.
But they couldn't stop them.
It's not a prison bill that will ever shut me up.
They call them rebels.
Basket of deplorables.
They call them rogues.
They claim to guns or religion.
And they say they're outlaws.
These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass.
War Room presents Rebels, Rogues, and Outlaws.
You set out to take Vienna. Take Vienna!
The national bestseller by longtime Bannon producer Dan Fluette. Take a journey through the pictorial history of War Room. In a culture that celebrates the weak, show your support by standing with the rebels. Go to doitfluette.com or scan the QR code on your screen. Use the code RAV20 for 20% off your order. Stand with the rebels and never back down.
All right, ring the bell, Oshkosh Bagosh. Ring it already, will you? Come on, it's 4 o'clock. Market's closed. Hit the buzzer. There you go. New York Stock Exchange closed. NASDAQ closed. Wall Street closed, but we're open. We're open for business. We're open for politics. We're open for news. Let's take a look how the market ended. I have 91. There we go. 91.5 points lower. It's very quiet today. Very subdued day today. NASDAQ up a little bit. VIX drifting lower. We like that idea. Gold holding. Look at that gold up almost $20 an ounce again, approaching $3,400 an ounce. You always like to see oil down a touch. And let me just do this. There's a couple of big stocks that were in the news recently. First of all, the most valuable company on the planet. Did you know what it was? It used to be Apple for a while. Then it became Microsoft for a while. The most valuable company in the whole wide world is NVIDIA. It's the stock. It's the company who Trump is getting along with very well. He's getting along with Mr. Huang, who's running NVIDIA, making sure that our AI chip production is fully going strong. So NVIDIA up a little bit again, up a bunch, about another $1 or so, up to 141. Apple very strong. Tesla backed off $12 a share today. So a little bit of mixed all over the board. And I wanted to point out that Bitcoin backed off a little bit too, 105,000 up even, 105,000 even right now. Again, that big high was 112,000 a couple of weeks ago. See where that goes. Feels like everything is kind of settling in a little bit, folks. All right, so there are the markets for you. I don't know, Chinese national couple just got caught by U.S. Customs and Border Protection trying to smuggle a biological pathogen, which is considered a potential agro-terrorism weapon, into the U.S. Here to discuss is author of Plan Red, China's project to destroy America, and China is going to war. Gordon Chang. Gordon, always good to have you on, my friend. Thanks, China. So tell us specifically about this couple that was trying to bring in some biological pathogen and the significance of that, will you?
Yeah. This couple, Chinese nationals, were bringing in a fungus which could cause blight to grain, wheat, rice, barley, maize. I think this should be considered a biological weapons attack on the United States because we need to put this into context. In 2020, Americans in all 50 states received seeds from China unsolicited. And I think that this was an attempt to get Americans to plant invasive species into our country to attack our agriculture. This year, Temu, the online Chinese site, sent seeds unsolicited into the United States. So this is part of a long-term campaign to destroy our agriculture, and we should treat it as an attack, which means that this couple should not be treated through the civilian courts. I think that this is much more serious.
How did they catch him, Gordon? Was it just they were trying to board a plane, or they were trying to get off customs, get through customs once they got here in the United States?
In Detroit, yes, and just sharp-eyed customs inspectors. Plus, also, there's been monitoring of their email traffic, husband and wife. So there was an alert that this might happen. Now, the wife was able to get in a dangerous pathogen a year or so ago. So this time, the other one got caught. But, we're lucky. We've got to make sure that we stop all of this, which means that every container, every suitcase, every package, every envelope from China should be opened. because we know what the Chinese are doing, and we have the means to stop it. Yes, this will slow down commerce, but we absolutely have to do it, Eric.
Right, of course. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when 2019, when someone must have flown some virus in here that ended up killing 7 million people around the world. I think anything coming out of China right now should be highly scrutinized. Every piece of luggage. I agree with you, and maybe, just maybe, Gordon, these are, dry runs, test runs to see what they can get away with, what they can bring in. I mean, hell, they've been going through our southern border for the last 4 years. Maybe they're trying to figure out a new way in.
Northern border as well, Eric. So, for instance, last February, Border Patrol caught 3 Chinese nationals trying to sneak into Maine under cover of darkness. What made this really ominous was that there was a 4th Chinese national, a migrant, who was on our side of the border, obviously there by prearrangement to get him in. Now, if you're a desperate Chinese guy who wants to live in freedom, you surrender to Border Patrol because you want to get yourself in the system and you want to get generous benefits from localities like New York. But if you're trying to come in undetected, you're coming here for no good. And we're seeing this, especially across the northern border.
So FBI Director Kash Patel said that this case, I'm quoting here, this case is a sobering reminder that the Chinese Communist Party continues to deploy operatives and researchers to infiltrate our institutions, target our food supply, and act that could cripple our economy and endanger American lives. Smuggling a known agro-terrorism agent into the U.S. is not just a violation of law, it's a direct threat to national security. So, and he does go on to say, I commend the FBI Detroit Division and our partners at CBP for stopping this biological threat before it could do real damage. Gordon, I spent enough time on the borders. In the southern border, San Diego specifically, in Texas as well, they will tell you, Border Patrol will tell you, they stop a lot of drugs. But what they do stop is somewhere around 2 to 3% of the drug traffic that comes through. They're not able to stop 97%. So if this Chinese couple gets caught, is it likely there's others doing the same thing?
Sure. And, we got to remember that a couple of years ago, an alert building inspector in Reedley, California, found what is essentially a secret Chinese biological weapons facility that had at least 20 pathogens, according to the official count, and almost 1,000 mice that have been genetically engineered to spread disease. One of those pathogens was Ebola, which has a 50% fatality rate. And I mention Ebola because at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, those fine friends who gave us COVID-19, they are now studying Ebola, and they're obviously trying to weaponize it.
Gain of function, Gordon? God bless the world if they're doing this again with Ebola. Can you imagine gain of function on Ebola, which is already deadly enough?
Yeah, and the one thing about Ebola is that it's not readily transmissible human to human. So if the Chinese figure out how to keep the lethality rate high and make it contagious, then they've got a weapon to do what they've talked about, which is to exterminate the American people. So we're talking about an issue of national survival, which means that this couple in Detroit, I think they should be going to either Florence, Colorado, which is a supermax, or to Guantanamo Bay. But I think these people should be put away indefinitely.
Let's expand this a little bit. We have our China expert in Gordon. So Pete Hegseth, several days ago, warned, you probably flew right under the radar. He warned the world that he believes a China attack on Taiwan is imminent. Like it's going down for real, so to speak. What do you think of this warning? You think are we going to see China attack Taiwan?
It could be Taiwan, but I think it's a higher probability that war in East Asia starts elsewhere. So in the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks, we have seen extremely belligerent Chinese military activity against South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, of course, Philippines, and faraway Australia. I worry about these low-level provocations because they could spiral out of control. And once they do, I don't think that the Chinese regime can deal responsibly with the world. So I worry about Taiwan, but I worry about these other places even more. How
worried, Gordon, are you about this new change in government, more, I guess, let's call them more communist for South Korea? They kind of took over the more conservative party, the more pro-American party. Are you concerned about, I talked to Steve Bannon daily. He's very, very worried about South Korea flipping to communist.
Yeah, that's a real possibility. I mean, a year from now, we could see South Korea as a communist state. or we could see it absorbed by North Korea. I'm not saying that will happen. I'm saying it could happen. Yi Jae-myung, who supposedly won the election after a lot of cheating, by the way, he ran as a moderate, but that was only to get elected. We know from his prior comments that he is very pro-China, very pro-North Korea, very anti-American. And, we have survived leftist presidents in South Korea before. But the thing about Yi is that he is more ruthless and more determined than previous leftists. So this is going to be a very difficult 5 years for us.
Bill O'Reilly says, no way. The South Korean economy is just pumping too well that they're not going to screw that up moving to a more communist state. Thoughts?
Venezuela. Venezuela was once a prosperous capitalist state. Look what happened to it. So, yeah, it's inconceivable to us because we're Americans and we think the world operates one way. But it operates very differently. And the assumptions that we make are unwarranted. So, yes, we've got to be extremely concerned about what's going to happen in South Korea, because now they've got a president who, if he had his way, and I'm not saying he will, but if he had his way, he would terminate the treaty relationship with us, and he would make South Korea essentially a communist country.
I think we have 50,000 troops, in South Korea, especially looking at that the border to North Korea. Would they move our people off the island?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they could easily break the treaty. That's what Yi would want to do. Now, he can't, because he's the president of a democratic state, he can't do exactly all that he wants. But as I said, he's much more ruthless and determined than previous leftists. So, yeah, we cannot take any of those scenarios off the table. And Bannon is right. This is something that we've got to worry about. This is something that we've got to manage. And it's going to be very difficult for us because we're just not accustomed to thinking about what could happen in South Korea, which is one of the most volatile societies on earth.
Indeed. Gordon Chang, always good to have you, my friend. Talk to you again very, very soon.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it.
All right, folks. We'll be back. All right, folks. Tax day may have passed, but for millions of Americans, the real trouble just beginning. If you missed the April 15th deadline or still owe back taxes, the IRS is ramping up enforcement. Every day you wait only makes things worse with over 5,000 new tax liens. Get this, filed daily, and tools like property seizures, bank levies, and even wage garnishments. That's right, they can go into your paycheck and grab it before you even get your own paycheck. The IRS is applying pressure at levels we haven't seen in years. Increased administrative scrutiny means collections are moving fast. The good news, though, there's still time for Tax Network USA to help. Self-employed or a business owner, doesn't matter. Even if your books are cooked or a mess, you got it covered. They've got it covered. Tax Network USA specializes in cleaning up financial chaos and getting you back on track fast. Even after the deadline, it's not too late to regain control. Your consultation is completely, absolutely free. And acting now could stop penalties, threatening letters, and surprise bank levies before they escalate. Call 1-800-905-8000 or visit tnusa.com/RAV. You may have missed April 15th, but you haven't run out of options yet. Let Tax Network USA help before the IRS makes the next move. And very quickly, before we go to break, I just want to remind you about that podcast we do over on digital, doing things we not necessarily can't do here. We have Diddy all over the Diddy trial. It gets weirder and weirder by the day. Today, some lady stood up and started threatening the federal marshals who were in court. I kid you not. Got to go over there, subscribe. It's always free. Back in 2.5. Look at that. Mad Dog. Is that a school? What is that? Like a stable? Where's it in Baltimore, Mad Dog?
This is Fort McHenry.
Oh, Fort McHenry.
Baltimore.
Got it. Fort McHenry, Baltimore. I stand corrected. By the way, I won't get into Baltimore's problems because there are many. My next guest is the Principal Deputy Press Secretary and Special Assistant to the President. Always happy to have Harrison Fields join us. Harrison, you know why I'm glad you're here? Because you're so damn good, my friend, number one. Number two, when those clowns over at Fox start using you more and more, just promise me you'll come back to this show because this is where it all started. You're doing a great job, Harrison. So listen, let's talk this one big, beautiful bill. Most Republicans, they're for it, but there are those who may not be for it, and they're standing, a few standalones, let's call it that, including Senator Rand Paul, who's saying he won't vote for it in its current form because of concerns for the debt ceiling. Just take a listen to the soundbite.
President Trump chided Kentucky Republican Rand Paul today for opposing the bill.
Senator, he says that you don't understand the bill and that you love to vote no.
Well, I would say that's not actually true. I would say that I've been pretty consistent in my time in the Senate at being opposed to deficit spending.
And so, Harrison, the point is that you're going to need just about every Republican senator's vote to get the bill to Trump's desk to sign it into law. What's the response to Rand Paul and I think one or two others who are pushing back, at least for now?
Yeah, well, the president is committed to getting this bill across the finish line. Listen, we understand the math here. The margins aren't great in the House or the Senate, but the margins are actually worse in the House, so we're able to get the bill passed with no problem there. The president is a master negotiator. He's going to get all sides involved. We have senators coming here any minute now to work with this president, about 17 senators, to get this bill over the finish line. These are priorities that the Republican Party has prioritized, have campaigned on for years, and they now have a president willing and able to get this into one big, beautiful bill, which is going to be one big, beautiful step in the right direction. And again, this is a reconciliation bill. This is not a spending package. This is a reconciliation bill that is dealing with discretionary funding. And this is why it has tax cuts and a bunch of other priorities that this president has adopted in it. We encourage every senator to support it.
Now, is this accurate? Because I think this is a really good selling point for the bill. Look, I don't like anything that increases the debt or makes government bigger. However, if you look at the bill, everything that's spent is paid for, actually. And the reason why any debt would go up is because of the tax cuts. The tax cuts are the reason for any increase in the debt. Now that's a good selling point. I want my own money. I want to keep my own money. And yeah, if it makes the debt go up a little bit, it'll create economic activity if I get to keep and spend more of my own money.
Well, the American people voted for President Trump because they were tired of the Democrats throwing their money into the fire to fuel their addiction of reckless spending. This president understands that the American people have been taken advantage of both economically and a host of other ways, and we want to make sure that the American people have more money in their pockets, and this bill does that to a historic fashion. And when you talk about issues when it comes to saving money, this bill does something that we haven't been able to do in over over 30 years, which is save $1.6 trillion in mandatory savings. And then on top of that, we just sent over a rescissions package to the United States House of Representatives yesterday with $9.8 billion in rescissions, which are codifications of the good work of DOGE, what this president was able to do. So for anyone that's saying we're not saving enough money, this bill is doing something we have never been able to do. Let's not make perfect the enemy of the good. This bill is historic. It contains every campaign promise that the president has made on the campaign trail. We encourage every senator to work with this White House, work with this president to get this bill on the president's desk.
So Elon Musk, obviously, Mr. Doge, the guy who kind of invented Doge, and Doge is a thing. There's a Doge meeting going on right now. The subcommittee MTG is chairman of, and it's great. Everything about Doge makes a lot of sense. Government efficiency matters. Elon is upset. Now, we know he left. He's not there every day anymore, but he kind of left Doge. He still got his finger in, but he's not happy with the bill. And he says, and I'm quoting, "This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination." And he added in a Tuesday afternoon post on X, "Shame on those who voted for it. You know you're wrong. You know it. How does it feel?" How does the president feel about Elon, who they were very, very tight, now all of a sudden kind of nuking this one big, beautiful bill?
Well, I take everyone back to the Oval Office last week, in which he had a very public goodbye for Elon Musk. He thanked him for his service. Not many CEOs would take time away from the C-suite and their lavish lifestyle to come to the West Wing or the Eisenhower Executive Office building to go through spreadsheets of the government to see how we can cut waste, fraud, and abuse. And that's something that Elon Musk graciously did as long as his team has Doge. Doge continues. Doge is a part of the DNA here at the federal government, and we're making sure we're going to continue these cuts. Listen, the president is the CEO of this country. He has a promise to its shareholders, the American people who voted for him and really at large, to make sure that this bill gets passed. Elon Musk is a CEO from multiple companies that have their own interests. We may have a disagreement here today, but that doesn't take away from the accomplishments of Doge, the historic achievements that Elon Musk has been able to do as a part of President Trump's team. But the president has a commitment to get this bill passed, and he's not wavered by it. Okay,
so there were reports that he was pissed off at Musk behind the scenes. I mean, I guess we won't know, but if you have any comment on that. Before we move on, are they still buddies? Is he still first bro?
Did you say 5 minutes? Eric, you know better than most, the president doesn't hold back his feelings on anyone. He's an equal opportunity offender. He will call it like it is. He calls a spade. And if he had any feelings about Elon or anyone else for that matter, you would hear from the president directly via Truth or on one of the many on-camera opportunities he gives the American
Or
people.
the one time I was at Mar-a-Lago and he came over to the table and he poked me in the shoulder and said, "Hey, I didn't like what you said about that one thing. Fix it." And then, of course, we clean things up. We clean things up when the leader of the free world says to clean stuff up. There was a call this morning. President Trump said that he had a long talk with Vladimir Putin, and he did say that Putin was planning and will plan some sort of return aggression against Zelensky in Ukraine. What else do we know about that, Harrison?
Well, again, this was another productive phone call. The president laid it out pretty clearly in his readout on Truth Social for the American people to see. This goes to show you his level of commitment. He's spoken to Putin so many times since joining office, something that President Biden wasn't able to do. Putin didn't want to talk to Biden. He looked at him as weak and feeble and not worthy of his time. And Putin understands that President Trump is a very different president. He's in the driver's seat, and he wants to make sure that he's coordinating with the American government on every move that he's making. The president's also talking to Vladimir Zelensky. The key priority here of the president and the national security team is peace. Whatever he has to do to achieve that magical word peace is exactly what the president's going to do. The president talked about in his truth message. This is a lot harder than many people are realizing. We don't have two sides that are necessarily in agreement of how they want to come to end this war. But the president and his national security team are committed to making sure that this war ends. And they also mentioned the issue of Iran. We want to make sure that Iran never gets the ability to form nuclear weapons that would be devastating, not just for America, our strong ally Israel, but really for the entire world. So this president is negotiating with world leaders to make sure that this world is peace.
All great, and the American people are behind that. I just have to ask this: does the president know Who knows? Do we know? Do you know? Can you help the American people figure this out? Because there are a lot of people who think Zelensky went alone. He attacked the Russian assets, the $7 billion worth of airplanes, nuclear-capable airplanes in the Russian fleet. We called it the Russian Pearl Harbor. Was the Trump administration notified prior to that attack?
I believe Caroline confirmed that they were not notified of that attack when it happened. But the one thing about this, because it's such a sensitive national security issue, is that, Caroline Leavitt, myself, many of the people that are speaking on these issues are not going to litigate the dynamics of such a complicated war on your show or on any other show. That, of course, would be irresponsible. And we're letting our national security team lead these negotiations, which are ongoing and productive, more productive than they've been over the last 4 years. But we've got work to do, and no one is downplaying the fact that this president is so committed to ending this war. He just needs partners in Ukraine and Russia to join him on that mission.
We send $180+ billion to Ukraine. You think the least he could do, Zelensky, would be pick up a phone and let Trump know, at least as the drones are on their way. But if he didn't even do that, boy, I would say these folks are on their own. Good. We wish you well, and let's get the hell out of NATO. Harrison, appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. We always appreciate you coming in and letting us know what, again, speaks for the president, Deputy Press Secretary to the president. Thank you so much for your time.
It's always a pleasure, Eric. Take care.
Okay, folks, we'll be back 2.5 minutes. Beautiful. Well, I mean, not that. It was Washington. It was going to be Washington, D.C. It was going to be the White House. It was going to be from, I guess, the other side, the back side, the front side of the White House, but on the other side's the Capitol. When are they finally going to admit it? When is the leftist machine going to admit that radical Islam is not just a problem, but it's also a homeland security problem? Free Palestine is no longer freedom of speech. It's no longer just an expression, but What's going on? What's the take? How many terrorist attacks? How many deaths does it take? After days of skirting the issue, the facts are out now. The Colorado terrorist, who was here illegally, by the way, folks, overstayed his visa. I'm just going to say that a few times because the mainstream media refuses to. Turns out the dude who has ties to the Muslim Brotherhood really likes him some jihad.
الله أكبر من كل شيء، الله أكبر من الصهاينة، الله أكبر من أمريكا وأسلحتها، الله أكبر من طائرات الF-35، الله أكبر مما هو دونه.
I'm quoting, jihad is more important than everything else. A jihadist in our country, a terrorist, but, Boulder police say motive is still unclear. So, definitely don't listen to what the terrorist says himself, Boulder police, you dumb asses. Because God forbid we tie this free Palestine terrorist to the other free Palestine people who've pervaded our cities, our streets, and our universities. Right, NBC? He's a lone wolf, says NBC. How the hell do you know that, NBC? He's a lone wolf, says NBC. Look how hard the media is working to set him apart. Lone wolf, believe me, those words are so carefully and strategically chosen. They have no idea if he's a lone wolf. It's a week out. Less than a week out. Just a string of lone wolf attacks aimed at the same group using the same rhetoric based on the same ideology, terrorism. Oh, and look, guys, the lone wolf's daughter had dreams of being a doctor. Are we supposed to care? Does that somehow make your father a better person? Her father's a terrorist who wants Jews, Americans, all of the West wiped out. Jihad is most important of anything, remember? He said it himself. He was in the country illegally, and he firebombed Americans, sometimes older Americans. But now we're supposed to be, sympathetic to her plight? You know what? Since Democrats are obsessed with due process, let's play a little game here, shall we? Here we go. Due process. Question number 1, are you here illegally? Answer, yes. Okay, that alone should be enough. But since we're being nice and kind of due process-y kind of people here, here's one more question. Question number 2, is anyone in your family a literal terrorist? Well, the answer, my young lady wannabe doctor, yes, your father is a known terrorist. Deport due process achieved. Any other questions, Hakeem? Chucky, Chris Van Hollen, you want to have some cocktails with this guy? But MSNBC got their marching orders, and they're just not having it when terrorists and his family get the boot from our precious homeland.
Making an example is understating it, Willie. The White House almost gloating a victory lap. A number of tweets last night about about this suspect's family, rushing them out. And I was told by a White House advisor late yesterday that this is sort of the plan here. Is that we know from covering Donald Trump for a long time, his reflex is always to come back to immigration. He believes that's a signature issue. He believes that's what got him elected, and that Americans want to see things like this. Now, in this case, obviously, we don't know the family's involvement. The suspect is accused of a heinous crime. There are certainly plenty of Americans who would be glad to see him go, but might have questions about the family. But they're leaning into this sort of in-your-face imagery.
In-your-face imagery? That's interesting, because you mean the imagery of a guy throwing firebombs at innocent people while yelling "Free Palestine"? There's an image I can't stop thinking about. I know that's tough imagery for you to swallow, BS, NBC. But also, by the way, did you hear this?
White House almost gloating a victory lap. A number of tweets last night about this suspect's family.
Maybe Freudian slip there. Well, which is it? Is the terrorist a victim or a suspect? Listen, when they speak, they reveal everything. The suspect is a terrorist who was here thanks to Joe and Kamala. But here's a little nifty little flashback for you.
This is irresponsible. It's the height of irresponsibility for the commander-in-chief to suggest that we have to build a wall across our southern border because there are terrorists who are trying to invade the country.
Well, that's interesting, because I would actually argue that the height of irresponsibility is actually letting a terrorist in and letting them stay. But I guess we're just a little different, you and me, Kamala. Well, but tell us again how the blood is on President's hands, you dumbass Keith Olbermann.
The Boulder, Colorado terror attack, the improvised flamethrowers, the attempt to burn Jews alive for commemorating the hostages of Gaza. This is the fault of Donald Trump.
Hasn't his 15 minutes been well expired? Oberman, you absolute insane lunatic. This is the fault of the leftist movement. Pride, climate, BLM, and now pro-Hamas. It's one and the same. Don't you believe me?
Here, let's talk about our favorite flags.
Oh, like overall, what my favorite flag?
Yeah.
Hezbollah.
By the way, I don't know, can you show that one more time? Mad Dog, can you re-record this? The guy over on the left is Cenk Uyghur's cousin or nephew, something like that. Total leftist. You show that picture, can you? No?
Here, let's talk about our favorite flags.
Oh, like overall, what my favorite flag? Yeah. Hezbollah.
Hezbollah, a terrorist organization that wants to end America. Folks, we have a terrorist radical Islamic movement right here on our hands, here in America, on our soil. It's real. Global intifada is here at home in America. It's on our college campuses. It's on our streets. It's spreading. It's in our own damn government. It's an inconvenient truth for the left, so protective of only certain groups. Imagine if a white man had thrown firebombs at Muslims. Imagine the coverage, the headlines, the protests, BLM style, mostly peaceful looting. They'd be painting the Muslim flags on the streets. It's not a story. It's not their story right now. It doesn't fit their agenda. They do everything they can to protect this man's identity, petrified of Islamophobia. And don't ever conflate this so-called lone wolf with the protests at our universities. Accept that they already are. They're conflated completely. Yet another tie to terrorism. Turns out that Tarek Bazrouk, currently awaiting trial, a Jew hater who protested against Israel on Columbia University's campus and contemplating setting a student on fire, allegedly had a direct link to Hamas, Hamas's deadly Al-Qassam Brigade's militant group. It's conflated. This isn't about a lone wolf. There's a massive Jew-hating, America-hating terrorist wolf pack alive and kicking here in America. But that's not Islamophobia. In this case, the term exists only to intimidate people into silence. Like you're a racist. Call people racist, and they're not, they'll shut up. Call them Islamophobic, they'll shut up. A term like Islamophobia is just another handy tool in their arsenal. No one is afraid of Islam per se, which is what the word Islamophobia implies. We're afraid of Islamic terrorists killing our people. But many people do fear becoming the victims of said Islamic terrorism. They're afraid of being killed in our own homes, in our offices by wild-eyed jihadists. They're afraid of car bombs or fire bombs and guys shouting, Allahu Akbar, or Free Palestine, while filming themselves slaughtering innocent people. It's rational to be afraid of Islamic terror. It's understandable to be angry about the World Trade Center. I was there. The Boston Marathon, the Orlando nightclub, or New Orleans, Colorado now. The list goes on, and it won't stop. It isn't a phobia to fear and be angry about senseless death delivered in the name of Allah, their God. But doing so is classified very differently. Now it's Islamophobia. Right now, the media is actively playing cover-up for the terrorist's identity, his ties. They're petrified that the pro-Hamas movement here in America could be harmed in a way by this guy who has, in their eyes, given it a bad name. Aw. But the movement deserves a bad name, all on its own. And defending these lunatics and their movement is wholly un-American. It's defending a group whose interests distinctly conflict with ours as Americans. And it's not Islamophobic to point that out. It's fact. This was Manhattan, hours after the New Orleans attack in January, chanting, globalize the Intifada. Wow, just hours after all got to see what globalizing the Intifada looks like in New Orleans, these people were calling for more terrorism in America. I'm against whatever that is being okay in my country. I'm just against that. It's not Islamophobic, but whatever that is, we need to point that out. Deport terrorist sympathizers, the whole lot of them. Deport their family, too. How about that? It's not Islamophobic to say that. It's called America First. And the Democrats and the mainstream media, maybe you should try that out. All right, folks, before we go, I want to let you know about a big special I'm hosting, airing this weekend called the Rio Reset. Tune in this Saturday to RAV at 4 p.m. I, along with the Birch Gold Group folks, will tell you all you need to know about this big event happening in Rio in July. It's big. It could cost all of us a lot of money. You have to protect. It is special this weekend, 4 o'clock Saturday. We'll be back 2.5 minutes. Prescott, Arizona. Look at that live shot. Nice, beautiful sky there, Prescott. All right, folks, think about it. Every dollar you spend is either supporting your values and working for you or against your values. In today's economy, where you spend your money matters. That's how we take the country back. Patriot Mobile is leading the way as America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. Switch today without sacrificing quality or service. You'll get exceptional nationwide coverage because unlike most budget wireless providers, Patriot Mobile has access to all 3 major U.S. networks. You can even add 2 numbers on 2 networks on one phone, something the big guys simply can't even do. Stay connected with flexible, unlimited data plans to fit your lifestyle. These plans offer high-speed data, mobile hotspots, international roaming, device protection, and even internet backup. Here's the thing, the best part, in fact. When you switch to Patriot Mobile, you're supporting faith, family, and freedom. If you believe in our First and Second Amendments and the sanctity of life and supporting our veterans, this is where you belong. Switching is simple. Keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. Patriot Mobile's 100% U.S.-based team will get you activated in just minutes. Right now, go to patriotmobile.com/RAV, patriotmobile.com/RAV, or you can call 972-PATRIOT to get a free month of service with promo code RAV, R-A-V. Make the switch. Defend freedom with every call and every text. That's patriotmobile.com/RAV or call 972-PATRIOT. All right, folks, in case you missed it, we were just chatting with Harrison Fields from the White House Deputy Comms Director. We asked him about this, but Elon Musk had some pretty strong words for President Trump's big, beautiful bill yesterday on X, where he wrote, quoting, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it." Well, Musk's tweet started some pretty serious chatter in Washington and beyond, even here in West Palm Beach. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked about Elon's tweet, and here's what she had to say.
And something that just crossed, Caroline, how mad do you think President Trump is going to be when he finds out that Elon Musk said, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it."
Look, the president already knows where Elon Musk stood on this bill. It doesn't change the president's opinion. This is one big, beautiful bill, and he's sticking to it.
All right, staying with it. Senator Rand Paul weighed in on the growing feud, tweeting his support for Elon's message, where Rand Paul wrote, "I agree with Elon. We've both seen the massive waste in government spending, and we know another $5 trillion in debt is a huge mistake. We can and must do better." Okay, so Trump had apparently heard and seen enough. By the time Rand Paul pressed send on that tweet, the president finally weighed in on Truth Social, saying this, quote, "Rand votes no on everything, but never has any practical or constructive ideas. His ideas are actually crazy. The people of Kentucky can't stand him." This is a big growth bill, and the feud goes on. Other news? Ted Cruz looked Cory Booker in the face and called him Spartacus. It was hysterical, especially because Cory Booker is on a run right now of pissing off just about everyone. Listen to this exchange.
You are very, very deep into the waters of hypocrisy in your criticisms of Chuck Schumer.
So let the record reflect that Spartacus did not answer the question and did not tell us whether the criminal law should be enforced, because he knows the answer is yes. And he knows that the Biden Department of Justice was being wildly political and partisan in refusing to enforce the law because they disagreed with the Supreme Court justice's rulings.
Spartacus. If you remember, Cory Booker called himself Spartacus. J.D. Vance has done a great job staying out of the spotlight and doing his work for the American people. But when J.D. does step into that light, he owns the moment every time. He sat with Orrin Cass and gave us another lighthearted signature moment. Listen to this interchange.
There are politicians out there they've just been politicians. But you are someone who was an intellectual first. Some people don't like the word intellectual, but I mean it in the good sense of the term. You were writing for National Review. You were at the bar late at night arguing about and helping shape these ideas that you are now.
I come here for free and you insult me and you call me an intellectual. Remind me that I wrote for National Review. What an this guy is.
That's fair. I will admit that I too wrote for National Review.
Yeah, by the way, hosts mistake all the time, having a long conversation, act like you know what you're talking about, and then finally asking a dumb question. Just ask the question. Let your guest answer. Charlemagne the God sat down with Eric Swalwell and asked him about a ton of stuff. He brought up some of the very elephant in the room, the Chinese spy. Remember Fang? Asked him about Nancy Pelosi, but absolutely shredded the current Democrat message. Listen to what he said right to Swalwell's face.
Why do a lot of Democrats still talk like Donald Trump is campaigning? Like when I hear y'all speak, it's like everything is anti-Trump, which I understand because, he is doing a lot of things that I would consider corrupt and unconstitutional. But he's in the White House already. Yeah. Like you're not running against him anymore. You still talk like you're campaigning against him, like you're trying to convince America he's bad. Yeah. He's in the White House. He's the president. Yeah. There has to be another strategy.
Like him or not, Charlemagne the God he's pretty fair. I mean, he's pretty fair. Clearly leans left, but he calls them out too. It's a really fascinating podcast that guy hosts. And Swalwell, I don't know, he's so cringe. I mean, if you're not watching what he's doing on Instagram, I mean, it's just everything he does. It just gives you goosebumps how cringe he is. Hakeem Jeffries has no problem lying to any face that meets his gaze. Here he is again talking about rising inflation, which we're actually not seeing here. It's actually going down. But let's call him poor man's Obama, make a fool out of himself again.
Costs aren't going down under Republican complete control of government. They are going up. Inflation is going up. The cost of living is going up. Life is becoming more unaffordable for everyday Americans. Donald Trump and Republicans broke their promise.
No, actually the opposite, Hakeem. Inflation is going down. It's going down every single month, and it will continue to go down with the oil prices as they go down. Well, Hakeem Jeffries lies about the economy and inflation. Well, that came moments after he threatened ICE officers for just doing their job. Listen to these big threats towards these working men and women who are carrying out the assignment that millions of Americans voted for, by the way, and all they're doing is protecting themselves and their families' lives. Watch.
Every single ICE agent who's engaged in this aggressive overreach and are trying to hide their identities from the American people will be unsuccessful in doing that. This is America. This is not the Soviet Union. We're not behind the Iron Curtain. This is not the 1930s. And every single one of them, no matter what it takes, no matter how long it takes, will of course be identified. That in fact is the law.
Hakeem Jeffries, you absolute moron. You absolute freaking moron. Do you have any sense in your mind? These ICE agents, these agents with this FBI, ICE, HSI, federal marshals, they cover their face when they're arresting Tren de la Agua thugs, gangbangers, because Tren de la Agua, we now know, has high-tech facial recognition software. You take a picture of someone's face, you can find out everything about them now. And they have that software. So Hakeem, why don't you publish your address? Why don't you go ahead and publish where your family lives and let the world know where you live, Hakeem, you moron, you absolute dolt. What the hell? Really? How about all our agents around the world? Should we out their locations, names, and families' locations too? Hakeem, you clown. I gotta go. We're gonna go to break. I'm pissed off. I want to talk to Bannon on the backside of the break. So there's a live shot. Nolans, right? Mad Dog, live?
Yeah, Nolans.
Live?
Yes, sir, live.
That's the French Quarter. So a little bit south of the French Quarter there, right on, what is it, body of water. I guess it's the Gulf of America. I guess it is. And place, just a wonderful place to have food and a great place. Listen, let's bring in Steve Bannon. I got to talk to him about this, Steve. Trump had a call. Put up the Truth Social, guys. Trump had a call with Putin this morning, 1 hour and 15 minutes. And he said Putin told him he was going to retaliate. He was going to attack Ukraine. And subsequently, Steve, we talked about this yesterday, there was no heads-up call from Zelensky to Trump prior to attacking the Russian military airplanes and nuclear airplanes. So Trump didn't get a heads-up after we give that SOB $180 billion plus. Didn't tell Trump. He just went and did it on his own with Lindsey Graham there. I mean, break this down for us, this call, hour and 15-minute call with Putin. How do you think that went?
First off, don't bury the lead. The first thing he told him is no peace deal. He said there's no peace deal.
Yeah.
And I'm forced to retaliate in a big way, I think, according to President Trump. And when President Trump uses the words big in talking to Putin, look, this is the Third World War. This is what I said the other day. This is unprecedented. Since we were allies in World War II, there's never been an assault by anybody affiliated with the United States, and particularly it hasn't been clear in the White House. President Trump still hasn't condemned it after Putin says we're going to hit back in a large way. I don't have it in front of me, whether he said we're going to hit back Ukraine or just we're going to hit back.
I don't have it in front of me, but I remember the comment. The comment Putin made, and it was actually on camera, a soundbite, where he said, we'll hit back Ukraine, and we will hit him back, Ukraine, and anyone involved and beyond. And beyond are the two words that are really troublesome.
Yeah. Well, today, I don't know if he reiterated that or just said Ukraine, because that came from the other day. But you're right. You're 100% correct, is that this is going up the escalatory ladder. Now, a couple things might have happened. Number one, I'm still not convinced. Jack Posobiec's not convinced. I'm not so sure Eric Bolling's convinced that the deep state, the guys running the war out of Wiesbaden, which the New York Times told us a year ago, and nobody refuted it, that German and American intelligence are basically running it, and the Ukrainian guys are getting them coffee. They're running it out of Germany. It's over 3,000 miles into Russia. At the type of bases they went to, folks, think about this. These bombers, they're older, but they're equivalent like the B-52s. Now, they're up on runways, but you have to have satellite targeting for this. You have to have target acquisition, artificial intelligence. It was an audacious attack, but well beyond the capabilities of the Ukrainians, just like the October 7th attack was well beyond the capabilities
can we highlight this for my audience so they, so you think that the sophistication of this attack begs the question, was the U.S., were we involved somehow in intel or more planning, et cetera? And if so, did you read anything in that Trump comment after that hour and 15-minute conversation on the phone, anything that would kind of prophylactically shield the United States from any sort of retaliation by Putin? Or did he open the door for potentially us or one of our allies?
What I didn't see remember, President Trump, let's go through the timeline. President Trump put this Truth Social up and immediately pulled it down. I'm sure somebody in the Nationals, Rubio or one of, Pete Hegseth or Scott Besson or somebody, they probably try to say, hey, maybe we're going to put that down. That's a readout that may be a little too specific. What I didn't see, which I hoped to have seen in that, was President Trump condemning the Ukrainian assault. He didn't condemn it, and he didn't say, I'm pulling money for it. In fact, you've got a senior U.S. senator over there who's very close to the defense industry, and he's on the front page of every paper in Paris. He's on the front page of every paper in Germany. He's doing nothing but primetime media all over there, and he's saying, hey, Trump says they got no cards. I think they got cards right before the assault, number one. Number two, he's sitting there implying he's got votes for a sanctions deal that can override a veto. And you've got Mike Pompeo. What the hell is Mike Pompeo, a former head of the CIA and State Department? What is he doing in Odessa? He's in Odessa down there, and he's talking about, even before the assault, that there, we got to stop Putin. We got to stop the reinitiation of the Russian Empire. What?
Well,
the American people are not at war with the Russian people, and we are being inexorably drawn in this. I think President Trump has got to say, look, the following. Number one, either I've done an investigation review and deep state members of the intelligence services and others actually did this, and I will hold them accountable, or we had nothing to do with it. I wasn't given a heads up by Zelensky. I condemn what he did, and we stop all further support. Both monetary support, we essentially pay for the entire.
He must have said that on this with call with Putin, hey, listen, I didn't get this heads up. Yeah, not that I could have done anything had I gotten it, but I certainly didn't get it. That was all him on his own. But you're saying that it was so sophisticated, he may be saying that and not knowing or not.
Well, maybe he wants plausible deniability, but Eric, I would assume that the president notifying the American people he had over an hour phone call with Putin, talking about Putin said, and President Trump said, this call's not that we're not going to have a meeting that what leads to peace, that these efforts don't lead. So he already said the peace thing's off the table for now. And then he said Putin told him he's going to hit back and hit back hard. Yeah. You would assume that the president, who's a pretty sophisticated guy, would have said right there, I don't know anything about that. We didn't know anything about this attack. I want to reiterate that. I condemn it. I told the Russian president I condemned it, and I'm pulling out all support. That was not there. That's the dog that didn't bark, right? So, hey, folks, we are now sucked in to a shooting war on the Eurasian landmass, and we should stand by and see what Russia's going to do. I'm sure Russia is going to do something that will, as we say, leave a mark.
Very quickly, we're into your show, Steve, but I just want to ask you if Russia does retaliate with Ukraine and I don't know, Poland, Poland, if they do, are we sucked in? I mean, are we still held by NATO?
It's not a random event that tomorrow the Chancellor of Germany is come over for a meeting. It just got called. When did that meeting get called? Well, at least what we know publicly is that TASS, which is the Russian news agency, and take it for what it's worth. Okay, it's a propaganda arm of the criminal class of Putin. These guys, the KGB guys that run the deal. They put out the other day that just given the back and forth, this is before the big assault, just given the back and forth they were doing on drone strikes, and Russia was all over these guys hitting with drone strikes, and they were hitting back, that they said publicly that the Russian military is starting to do target acquisition packages in Berlin, around Berlin. And next thing you know, Mertz is coming over here for a meeting with President Trump. Folks, go back and read your history of the lead up of 1939, 1941. These are the types of things that happened.
What is this? What's this
that
mean?
lead you on the path of war.
Is this a hat in hand? Save us, God help us, because we're going to need your help if this thing gets crazy.
I don't think it's. I think the thing is that hey, we and the French and the UK are pulling together, and we see these guys as a problem. We agree with Pompeo. Lindsey Graham's telling us that he's on our side. We're NATO. We're the global. We're the European elite, and you need to jump in here. Yeah. And they're going to get hit tomorrow. You said that Ukraine has no cards. Well, Ukraine's got a lot of cards. Including doing an assault, as I keep saying, Curtis LeMay, the greatest strategic bombing general we've ever had, that brought the Germans to their knees and then brought the Japanese to their knees. In his wildest fantasy, he never